Welcome back, and I'm speaking with Olympic bronze medalist and Singapore kite foiler Max Maeder and Culture, Community and Youth Minister Edwin Tong. And I'm also joined by our reporter Alif Amsyar, who covered the Olympic Games in Paris and Marseille. Alif, thanks for joining us. So you've been following Singapore's Olympians around the past few, 2 to 3 weeks. I'm sure it's been an exhilarating, fun, tiring experience. What or who stood out to you the most?
Well, sure, I can say that we're all very jet-lagged, but the experience of it all, so many memories, right? You can see all the pictures, beautiful pictures of Team Singapore athletes. I think for me, one story that stuck even after the games are done and dusted is Yeo Chia-Min's journey, our badminton player, who made it so close to just short of the quarterfinals. She was so emotional in that final doorstop we had. And I continue to think about it, the kind of journey that our athletes have gone through to get to that stage. Of course, we have the Max Maeder story, 17-year-old, and at the doorstop, I think a lot of the international media members were all very interested in Max. I'm not sure if you know this, but a lot of German media personnel came up to me and we were talking about how you could speak German so fluently. And it was a very nice kind of gathering of all media personnel, athletes coming together for the Olympics. So really a lot of memories there.
For sure, and we've been following you on social as well. I mean, you've been very busy. Minister, how do you feel about Singapore's overall report card, though, at the Paris Olympics?
Well, a couple of standout moments. I think I agree with Alif. I think Chia-Min was a standout moment. We all felt so much for her. I was there watching her in person, and I think the moment that last shot went marginally out, I think, we all felt it deep in our hearts. But there were highlights as well. Ching Hui did wonderfully well with 2 national records, 2 personal bests, and she was just 1 spot shy of the 1500 finals. I thought Ken Yu did well. He fought hard. Unfortunately, came up against a very much informed Axelsen, who was, really on his day, I think, quite hard to play. Other examples of success, Steph Chen's finals in the sprint, kayak sprint, was a surprise for us, but I thought she had worked very hard, and I think she deserves all of it. Overall, I think we've done well, but like Max says, every time we talk about athletes, there's always something more. There's always what more could we have done? How far can we have gone? How much further could we have gone? And I think when we sit back and we think about what we will do better next time, we always ask those questions.
And in that context, what more could we have done, Max? Of course, your bronze medal, your coach has said, that your Olympics outing will be a good lesson for the future. You went into this competition as the top favorite for gold. How do you see your strategies changing for future competitions?
Well, I think, just to give a little bit more of perspective, the reason why, at least I assume, it didn't go as great as expected was because I didn't stick to a set procedure and plan that we had because of, everything is going on. Long story short, the strategy of incremental improvements, what we have laid in place and how it's going, isn't going to change drastically from what we've had. More so, it's a very, very stark reminder to stick to what you've worked on and believe in what you've worked in and execute it as best you can.
And it definitely paid off because we saw the Singaporeans turning up in droves to support the athletes earlier today. Alif, you were covering that event today as well as at the Games. We've been following your news reports. We've been going to you for live crosses. How far do you think news coverage for our athletes go in helping to further Singapore's sports scene and support our athletes at the end of the day?
I think it's very crucial, right? When you tell stories of the athletes, because it's not a single, even if Max is out at the water alone, he has a team behind him. And for example, kite foiling, it's such a niche sport. So a lot of Singaporeans don't even know what the sport is before the Olympics. And they come to the news channels to find out what it really is, how it's being played. And for in the case of Max as well, his team really helped us to understand the sport better. Even at the Olympic Games where we were waiting because of the delays and all that, the team constantly told us about what is going to happen next. what we were waiting for. So it's constantly trying to educate people, even though this is all the thrills and spills, the highs and lows. It's really about an education. I think that's very important, and I think that's the special part about sports.
But to build on Alif's point, I think it's really important for the media to tell stories about our athletes, to give them the perspective, the background. It's not just about that race or that event itself, but what is the person behind the athlete. And to tell those stories, it really brings it home that being a Team Singapore athlete is more than just what you perform, how you perform, but the whole training, the whole discipline, all the sacrifices that you and your team have put in. And I think the press did a really good job there.
Alif, I think, has been doing a very good job as well, doing that. He was talking about this niche sport, Minister. Singapore's latest Olympic medal, of course, being in sailing. Do you think Singapore's sport niche is now in smaller, less common sports like kite foiling, rather than the traditional table tennis or swimming, for example?
Well, yes and no. I think the fact that there are niche or new sports is a thing to stay. We've got a couple of new emerging sports that have become very popular with Singaporeans. And our job in the government is really to be where Singaporeans go. If we've got a great athlete who is in a niche sport, we support that athlete. And so, take for example, our SPEC scholarship. A couple of years ago, we extended the SPEC scholarship to a skydiver, Kira. And it's not in the major games, it's not in the Olympics, but we have a great performer in Kira, and we thought we should support her, and we did. So I think it's important to look at this, not so much as whether it's a niche sport, but whether Singaporeans pursue it and do well in it, and we support them.
Is there enough funding, though, to go around?
Well, funding is always finite. It's not limitless resources, but we make the best we can, and we put the funds into places which allow us to unearth potential. So SPEC's potential is one example. We put it into our NSAs so that they also help in turn to develop the grassroots, develop the community. And overall, I think it's not so much just funding, but also the mindset, the culture of wanting to be in sport and to excel and to find a pathway to success through sports.
Max, we have to thank you for introducing kite foiling to us. Like Minister Tong was saying earlier, I mean, we had to learn all about it. We had to even come up with an explainer on our end to help our audience understand the sport better. With your bronze, what are your hopes on the development of kite foiling in Singapore and as well as in the region?
Well, I mean, it's always a pleasure to share my sport to everyone, and thank you very much for sharing it so informatively. I would love if it doesn't stand as kite foiling should be more popular in Singapore, but the value of sport itself and the beauty, the joy, the journey, the values that you have in it, and sport itself should have this type of popularity and have this effect, because at least I believe that it's a wonderful thing and a wonderful aspect to add onto your life, and that it enriches the experience that you go through with, right, in life.
You started at a very young age. What is it about kite foiling that you appreciate so much?
I could list you 1,000 reasons, but I think probably for me was I happened to chance upon it, and I liked it. I liked the feeling. And it evolved into, loving to improve at something. And then it changed to, bringing other people along in the journey and competing and all of that, and many different reasons. But in the end, I stuck with kite foiling because I liked it. And then it moved on into something more developed and deeper.
That's a great story. Alif, with the Olympics now over, what are some of the lessons that you've learned from your news coverage over the past 3 weeks?
I think one lesson I've learned is teamwork, right? The athletes are out there, lots of teamwork. For me personally, we travel 2 hours in, 2 hours out every day. My crew is carrying lots of equipment, but we all do it as a team. If one team encounters difficulty, the other team steps in. And I think that's a very important lesson that I've learned. It's a very unique experience as well. I think not many reporters get to cover the Olympics. It's 4 years apart from the other editions. And I think I take away lots of experience reporting on the ground as well. all the weather, you know. In Marseille, we were really baked.
Yeah, welcome to the club.
Yeah, welcome to the club, you know. So I'm very happy that you get to come into our studio and you get to feel a bit of a very coolie environment. But yeah, I really thank my crew. They worked so hard for this assignment. It really felt like a joy every day coming to watch our athletes compete. So very happy with that,
great.
yeah.
I think we have time for one last question. Minister, you know, SEA Games and Asia Games, they are on the horizon. We have Team Singapore learned from the Paris Olympics. And how will the government be supporting our athletes to succeed in these games?
Well, you know, it's a non-stop journey, right? We keep learning and we keep improving. And so we'll take the lessons from our athletes and our officials from Paris 2024, apply them to the next games, look at how much more we can support the NSA. So that's all in the short term and that's ongoing. But in the mid to longer term, I think we need to look at systemic changes. How can we professionalize the daily training environment? How can we bring sports science and sports medicine closer to the sporting world to help the athletes more directly? How can we build a stronger, more professional setup within our NSAs to ensure that sport administration is tip-top and you know, always looking out for the interests of the sport and the athletes? These are all steps that are ongoing and we'll have some plans for these shortly.
I think the future is looking very bright. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure speaking with all of you, and thank you so much for coming in. That was Olympic bronze medalist Max Maeder, Culture, Community and Youth Minister Edwin Tong, and CNA's Alif Amsyar. Thank you all for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me.